Hi everyone, this is Ricky Spencer and welcome to another of our Voices series, Sociology of Media. And today we're going to talk about the importance of volunteering in the Australian community. And this is of relevance today because after the going through COVID, it's been reported that we've lost 50% of our volunteering workforce throughout Australia. So I thought today would be an important day that we speak to somebody who is heavily invested and spends his life journey now volunteering in many spaces. He is a dear friend of mine, Max Primmer. Welcome, Max Primmer, to the Sociology of Media Voices series for 2023.
Thank you, Ricky. And it's actually Primmer.
Oh,
Max
so
Primmer.
thank you. Sorry, that.
Yeah, that's all right. No, that's quite all right. Quite all right. Yes.
Lovely.
And of course, volunteering. Yeah, you go ahead.
Wonderful. So let's just start at the beginning, Max. Tell us a little bit about your journey. When did you first sort of start getting into volunteering?
Well, it was actually in the 70s and 80s, mainly in the 80s when the AIDS crisis hit. And I didn't think of it as volunteering then. I just considered it helping friends out and being part of our community to assist people on their journey and do what little things I could do to make life easier for them, because obviously most of them were struggling really hard with having no money, with having a death sentence hanging above them, and just living life where no one would come and visit them because they were scared if they touched the door handle, they'd get AIDS. If they, went near the person and somehow the germ would jump into them. It was a really bizarre situation. And, people didn't want to read up about the situation and find out exactly what this hideous disease was. They just heard what the media told them and they went with the flow on that. So that was when I started the volunteer section, yeah.
And at that period of time, Max, giving up your time to help our community at that point of crisis, was it something that you found in a community that people would say that they volunteer working with people who were succumbing to AIDS?
No, not really. Most people, if they did it, would keep it under their hat. So they wouldn't actually tell it, whereas I thought it was very important that message got in and we needed to talk about it so that more people would actually get involved in helping people who were, in a difficult situation and who were struggling with life and struggling with making food or getting food. And so it was just a matter of putting a few hours aside every other day to go and assist these people, whether it be to change a bed or, as I said to you once before, my partner was a very good cook, so he would make up meals. And of course, most people in those days who were suffering didn't eat very much because their appetites weren't there because of, what they were going through. So my partner would then make up meals. We would take them round. He'd help the person eat the meal because quite often they didn't have enough mobility. And I'd vacuum floors and change beds and do all that sort of thing. So that was how we worked.
And with your time doing that type of very important work, Max, what was your sense of, what did you feel that you got out of doing that volunteer work?
Well, it was giving back to the community that I lived in, the community I loved. And it was just because I was brought up in a situation where everybody helped everybody. I lived in a small community when I was younger. All our family lived on, farms next door, a farm over the road, the farm around the corner. And our little community was always there for each other. So if someone had a 21st birthday or someone had an engagement or whatever it might have been, if there was a funeral, everybody got together and made food and came along and all joined in together. So I think I got that from my family to be a volunteer, to help people. I didn't consider it volunteering. Like I said, I just considered that was my role, was to help people where I could.
And that sort of steered you on up to in your later life, Max. And moving forward now, you a few years ago found yourself in a situation that you needed to get a kidney transplant. Did you want to sort of tell us
Yes.
a little bit about that experience for you?
Yeah, so I'd had a few issues with my prostate earlier on in my life, and I was on certain medications to help that. But every blood test that I had after that didn't show anything up about my kidney failure. And one night I was at work and I felt ill, like I had the flu. And I went home, slept well. The next morning I saw a doctor because I was cleaning at a doctor's surgery, and he sent me back home after a nausea injection. And by 11 o'clock that morning, I was in the local hospital with total kidney failure. So there was no forethought about it coming on. No one told me 6 months before it was going to happen. And I personally think I was very lucky that it happened so quickly. I just had to accept my situation. So there was no point in crying, why me, or, why didn't it happen to somebody else? It was just there. That was it. And I was pretty ill at the time. So I just went on with it. And luckily, I had a very good renal health doctor. The doctors at the local hospital were amazing, and they got me through. And then I started dialysis. And that's when it really clicked in that I needed to be part of this volunteer community to help other people. Kidney disease is something that nobody thinks about, and there is tests available. So everybody should get it checked out, male and female, because it does happen to everybody. And there was just, you just need people. Like when they told me I had total kidney failure, it's like, okay. And like I said, I was pretty ill. So I got through the first few weeks, and then suddenly it dawned on me that I'm in this situation. So just make the best of it. Accept whatever the doctors say, because they're the experts. I didn't know what was going on. And they tell you to do something, you do it. And I followed that advice all the way through, right up to the kidney transplant and even afterwards. And for a lot of people, mainly, I think men, because it takes away their independence. I mean, ladies, it takes away women's independence as well. But men, a lot of men get it when they're older, when they're maybe 70s, 80s. And of course, they were brought up in a time when they were the breadwinner. They were the ones who had to go out and earn the money and, those sort of things. And it's ingrained in them. So they feel like they're letting everybody down by being in this situation. So that's when I started being a volunteer for Kidney Health Australia.
And can you tell us
quite a bit of...
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do in that space as a volunteer?
So I go and visit people in the hospital that are going through dialysis, and I just talk to them and tell them that, it's going to be all right. Okay, you're going through a little bit of a rough patch now, but if you put a positive spin on stuff and just acceptance is the main thing, and then you will get through it. Like there was one particular gentleman who was at our local hospital, and he was so panic-stricken, and his whole body would shut down when they came near him with the needles. And so I went in and I just sat with him and held his hand and talked to him and got him through that initial start. And then I would sit with him because his blood pressure would be all over the place because he was having panic attacks. That's the sort of thing it does to people because they've never been through something like this before. And it's not an easy journey for a lot of people, but for me, it was something that had to be done, so I just did it.
And that, I think, is important, coming from someone like yourself with living experience of it. Do you think that also helped the person that you're talking with, the fact that you had gone through this as well?
That is the main thing, because even most of the nurses who do the dialysis treatments have not been through it. So they have all the knowledge, and they're absolutely amazing people, as all nurses are, but they still have not lived through it like I have. So when these people are first put on dialysis, to have someone who's travelled that road is the most important thing for them. Just to be able to ask questions, how did you cope with this? How did you cope with that? What happened when this happened? And like I said at the start, I was very, very fortunate in my treatment because I did as I was told. I didn't have any issues at all. Just go into the hospital, you do your 4 hours or 5 hours, and you come home again, and you're back 3 days a week. So it is a big ask of a lot of people because it messes up your week completely. You've got to think every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, you're out of action for 4 hours. But to me, that 4 hours was taken up with reading books, talking to other people, watching a bit of telly, having a cup of tea, whatever it might be.
Mm. And how long have you been doing that particular role?
Well, I had my transplant in 2011, 2012, and I've been doing that sort of role ever since then. So I just if the local hospital calls me and says they've got a patient who needs a chat, I'm there. I will just go in and talk to that person and help them as much as I can.
So, Max, now tell us a little about your other volunteer spaces. I know you're very passionate about housing, especially for our LGBTIQ community, those in the older spaces, golden years of life. Tell us a bit about what got you interested in that, and a bit about the work you do with Housing for the Age Action Group.
Okay, thank you. HAG is something which I'm really, really loving working with HAG or for HAG as a community educator. And I got into that because a friend of mine messaged me and said, look, I've seen this online. You won't see it because it's not, she was a person who checked out government websites and that sort of thing, and she found something. And I was really, really thrilled to be part of it because it's something we've all got to focus on. People of the LGBTQI community are really struggling at this time. Now, in the town that I live in, we have a lady who is also LGBTQI, and they've started a co-housing group. And they've actually raised enough money to buy 5 acres in another little town nearby, and they're going to build 30 units on that with a communal space in the middle. So the property they bought already has a house on it. They'll turn that into their community space with kitchens and food areas where people can eat, but also people will have their own space to go back to. And I think that is something we could actually all work towards, because then, the people that live there have their own space to go home to where they want to read a book, or they just don't want to talk to anybody. And that happens a lot of the time. You don't specifically want to be around people. You want some alone time. Some time to yourself to go through your thoughts and work through things in your mind. And that is very, very important. But to have a space where you can walk outside your door and there'll be someone there. There'll be someone pottering through the garden. There could be someone else going for a walk, and you can say, can I join you? And that gives you that sense of human contact, but you're not actually engaging in really, really heavy duty contact.
And I guess I think that's what opportunity for people who would want to volunteer, even from within our own community.
That's right.
And who are in that space, who may want to help with gardening, or if there's for chatting, which is wonderful that, creating that space. And I was just reading recently about housing that when it comes to the private rental sector, that more people who are over 50, and this was reported in the Australian Bureau of Statistics 2021, over 55% of people over 50 now are renters as opposed to owners.
Yes.
And
that's right.
Horrible correlation to that is that private rentals have in the last 2 to 3 years gone up 200, in some cases more percent. How do you feel that is impacting our older LGBTIQ community?
Well, I think it's impacting very, very heavily, because people have, not only have they got what is happening with their own bodies, whether they've got some sort of illness or some sort of ongoing mental health issue, something that's happened to them many years ago is still ongoing, and they've got to take tablets for it. They've got to sit down because their legs aren't working properly. And all on top of all that, they're thinking about, what happens if my house gets sold under me? What happens if the flat gets sold? Where do I go? What happens if the rent goes up by even $10 a week? Is a lot of money for a lot of people, and they just can't afford it. So I think this is where governments and local councils need to step up to the mark, because there is land, like state governments, federal governments own lots and lots of land. They could easily donate some of that land to have a co-op housing built on there. All right, everybody might not get on together. And that's fine. Every human's not going to love every other human. That doesn't work like that. But it's just the fact that there's other people around you. There's other human beings that you can see. And if you, like you said, if we as a community could go to these places and say, okay, I'll come in on Tuesday, or I'll come in on Thursday, and I can spend an hour reading a book to someone, or I can read a newspaper to someone. I can bring a movie in with me that we can watch together. Any little thing like that makes a big difference. And I think, a lot of people that have gone into aged care facilities could have actually stayed out of them if there was these things available. If this type of housing was available, they wouldn't need to go in there.
And then the other areas I know you're very passionate about is in hospitals and supporting people in hospitals. Tell us a little bit about the importance of volunteering in that space, because I remember you mentioning that you also support people by driving people to their appointments. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
All right. So our local hospital has a community health centre in the building next door to where the hospital is. So the hospital is one building, then they have an aged care facility, and then they have a community health where people who are, on pensions, people who are struggling can go there and get their feet, their toenails done cheap. They can go and get things like that done. They can book in for all sorts of different things. And a lot of people don't have cars. They don't have transport. Their family might live 100 miles away, or might not live in the state even. So people can actually call the community health centre, and they have 2 cars. So they call up and say, look, I've got an appointment at such and such on such and such a day, and I've got to be there at such and such a time. And then the community health call me or some of the other drivers, and we can say yes or no. I always feel guilty when I say no, but sometimes it clashes with other things that I've got on. But it's such a wonderful experience because, once again, I've met people in the town I live in that I never knew. And these people are lonely. There was one particular person who I took for an appointment who had been struggling for 3 years with a hip replacement because someone had told her that something could go wrong. So once that got into her mind, she couldn't shake it. And she was so scared that this operation would go wrong and she'd be worse off. And by the time we'd been for one appointment, she'd absolutely changed her mind, and now she's got a new hip and she's doing really, really well. So that's the sort of thing it is. And you just talk to people when you take them for appointments. More often than not, when you take someone older to an appointment, I mean, around my age, I'm saying older, they don't have anybody, and they might not be good hearing, or they might not have a good frame of mind. So quite often I've been in with them to the surgeon, to the doctor, to listen and then assist them, because we'll come out and they'll say, now, what did he say about so-and-so, or what did she say about that? And so it's just another pair of ears to listen when you're in with this person at a surgeon or a doctor.
Max, I just hearing all these stories, it seems to me that volunteering has given you a kind of identity.
Yeah, exactly.
And tell us in a few words, what does volunteering mean for Max at this age?
All right. So it's giving back to the community I live in, because they accepted me as soon as I moved here. I've been here 20 years now. But I was accepted into the community, so now it's my turn at my age, and I'm in reasonably good health, even though I've got a few issues, but I'm still in reasonably good health and able to drive. So my role is, as an elder of our community, is to help everybody. Doesn't matter whether they're LGBTQI or whether they're heteronormative people. It doesn't bother me. People are people. And if they need assistance, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, is just be there for people and help people wherever I can.
And we really thank you for sharing these moments for volunteering. And if anybody's interested in doing any volunteering in, obviously in Victoria, go to govolunteering.com.au, check out Volunteering Victoria, any other state, Volunteering Australia, because there are so many opportunities. We desperately need people of all different intersectionalities to come together and give something to the community. And, even like myself with my disabilities, I still love giving back to the community in my capacity that I can. And that's the thing I wanted to share with everyone. You may have your own limitations, but that's okay, because I think most organizations, or all organizations, will work to that and to your strengths and support you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Max, for spending some time with us talking about the importance of volunteering and how we, of our older generation, giving back to all communities, serve an important role. And thank you for being a volunteering champion in Victoria.
Thank you, Ricky. I loved it. Thank you very much. Bye.